Chapter 2, January 12, 2201, New Denver. Cooper moved slowly as he woke up the next morning. Most of his body ached from the wild dog experience, but the rattling was too much to take. Not again, Cooper thought, as the ventilation panel in their two-room apartment was loose and banging slightly back and forth. Cooper was a 14-year-old boy, 5 feet 6 inches tall, with short, black, stringy hair. He was so skinny that some of the other kids teased him by calling him Toothpick. His wrists were so thin that he could wrap his fingers around them with ease. The Timex watch that he found recently topside was too loose to even bother wearing, but he was smart and had a knack for fixing things. He eased himself out of the small bed in the corner and grabbed the screwdriver from the desk. In a flash, he moved the desk to the wall and was up on it, tightening the screws to the ventilation panel and quieting the rattle. He got down from the desk carefully so as not to disturb the piles of rusty parts and gadgets lying on his desk. He sat back on the bed, not bothering to move the desk back to its place. He was alone at the moment, and glancing at the digital clock on the terminal screen, he realized that his dad was probably still at work. Mitch, his father, worked at the burn pit. This was a place where all of the trash was brought for recycling and in most cases burned for electricity. With the most recent dust storms topside, there was less power generated from the massive solar array, and the city resorted to increasing burning to generate the necessary electricity to power the underground complex. Even with the increase in burning, Cooper could tell that the rations of electricity to their apartment were still in place, as the quality of lighting from the 2 small lights in the room dimmed at regular intervals. With the lack of solar power, his dad had picked up more shifts at the pit and was now working double shifts. This meant a little more food rations for the 2 of them, so Cooper wasn't constantly in a state of hunger. However, his dad was never home now. It looks like my fix will hold for now, Cooper thought, not hearing the rattle anymore. Time to go to work! Cooper didn't go to school. Using the family terminal, he had mastered most of the basics in math, science, history, and literature by his 13th birthday, so he was able to test out and not be stuck in the cramped classroom every day. Now he was a freelancer, the name for those seeking treasure topside. He got out of his sleep clothes and began the arduous process of preparing for the winter weather. He began dressing in layers, first the long underwear, then the overalls, winter coat, hat, gloves, and finally the hiking boots. He took a moment to admire the boots. Cooper was a scavenger by nature, having grown up with no real family other than his father, who was always working. He had to search for his own adventures. Finding the stairs to topside had been fortuitous, and now he went up them almost every day. Very few humans ventured outside anymore. As the weather and elements grew worse, most of the population moved underground. Many of the younger generation were actually afraid of topside, while Cooper thrived on it. In recent years, he realized that there was an opportunity there. Many of the older generation longed for the early days, for the time when they had so many materialistic items like jewelry, coins, photos, books, gadgets, or anything that would help them to remember what life was once like. As a freelancer, he would go through the ruins of the ancient buildings, seeking any item that he could trade or try to fix. While most times it just paid an extra food ration or 2, sometimes he could trade for something he actually needed, like the boots he now slipped onto his feet. He had been extra lucky on that trip, finding a pair of teacups made of real china, which he was able to bargain with an older woman for her late husband's mostly unused hiking boots. And they even fit well, pretty close anyway. Cooper first learned of the freelancers when he was still in school. He was doing some research in history class about Denver. Not New Denver, but the one topside, above the vast underground complex. He stumbled onto a website all about freelancers. Well, actually, this site was about a place where people could post about things they wanted. Things weren't really manufactured anymore like they once were. The underground cities were mainly focused on production of goods to support the city and materials to send to space. In fact, all of the jobs were now government jobs. So the site was like a set of want ads. There was an underground trade for items that still existed from the past. Like the teacups he found, there were hundreds of things wanted by others. When Cooper found the website almost 2 years ago, he was fascinated by people's desires. Later on, as he explored deeper, he found the other side of the trade, the seller of goods, the freelancers. On the discussion boards, there seemed to be a few regulars in New Denver, so Cooper decided to message one of them. Within minutes, he received a response. FL978 replied with a question, "Who are you?" Cooper responded, "I am Cooper, and I'm wondering if you could tell me more about freelancing." FL978 replied with a web address and then stopped messaging. Cooper went to the web address and it asked for a password. What could it be, he wondered. He tried his name first, but that was too obvious. Then he tried freelancer, freelancing, and New Denver, but all of those failed as well. Then he tried Topside, and it worked. He was accepted onto the board. He was now on a private message board with one other member, FL978. But then the name changed to Glenn. "Hello, Cooper, and welcome to the Freelancing Message Board." Glenn posted. All Cooper could think of was to write cool, but instead he wrote, "Hello, Glenn. Thanks for letting me join." "So it sounded like you have some questions for me. Let me tell you first, there are times when the system will get hacked, and if that is the case, we will go offline, but I will send you a message again with a new link." "Why the secrecy?" typed Cooper. The response came back, "Well, freelancing is not totally legal. I mean, everyone wants us to find these treasures topside, but the government doesn't want us up there seeing all the destruction. They don't really want us to find the items that will remind people about the good old days, because that could incite more riots. Many people are not happy with what society has become, but they have no fight left in them, and as long as they get their rations 3 times a day, they are content to live with it. So before you ask, make sure you really want to do this. Topside is not a safe place. Although I have never seen anyone, there are stories about vicious raiders, crazy people, and even some wild animals that could end you without anyone even knowing about it. There is no security topside, and there is no one to help if you get hurt." Glenn wrote this with a seriousness in his post that made Cooper think twice for a moment. I mean, he was only 12 years old. "So are you a freelancer, Glenn?" typed Cooper. "Yes, Cooper. This is what I do for a living." "Why do you do it? Aren't you afraid of everything you said above?" Cooper questioned some more. "Well, it's like this, kid. You can either live life trapped underground, or you can add some adventure. I couldn't stand being trapped in those hallways every day with the same temperature, the same people, the same everything. I needed something more from my life." "Do your parents know you do this?" Cooper asked. "Let's just say they look the other way. They know that I go somewhere, but they don't care because I provide for them. I have given them some great gifts and lots of real food. The trading system is an excellent way to make your life so much better. I must ask, though, what sector do you live in?" Glenn inquired. Cooper thought about it for a moment before responding. Should I give this information to a total stranger? Then he didn't worry about it too much. It was only the sector, not his apartment number. "I live in Sector 14, Cooper typed. "Okay, that is good. I was afraid you were going to infringe on my turf. I'm way down in Sector 104. As long as you don't go below Sector 100, we won't have problems." Glenn said this with what sounded like a veiled threat. "I understand, but how do I get topside? I mean, I haven't seen any signs or anything," Cooper typed. "Well, that is going to be your first mission, to figure it out. You are going to have to do some exploring and probably break some rules. Obviously, you aren't going to find an exit from the pathways. You are going to have to check out some areas that are listed as off limits and look for pipes and some stairs leading up. Remember, though, if you really want to do this, you are going to have to be careful. Search for these stairs when no one is watching you. Be discreet. Again, most of the people don't care, but there are some of the orthodox ones who will turn you over to security in a heartbeat if it means an extra ration or two. Most won't say it, but they want you up there finding treasures for them," Glenn instructed. "Okay, that makes sense. Thanks for all the information. Can we talk again sometime?" Cooper asked. "Sure, kid. The freelancers need to stick together. Plus, we love to talk story about the adventures," Glenn typed. "All right, gotta go," Cooper replied and then signed off. Wow, a freelancer. That sounded like a career he could really go for. School was such a bore, and he didn't want to follow in his dad's footsteps at the burn pit. Snapping back to reality, Cooper looked down at the boots again. They were so nice. He continued to talk to Glenn over the years as a freelancer, sharing stories back and forth. Cooper suggested they meet sometime in person, but Glenn was against it. Glenn had heard stories about some freelancers meeting as groups in New Topeka, but then they were never heard from again. He was leery about taking risks, unless he was topside seeking treasure. Then he would try just about anything. Cooper's trip today to topside was not the usual search. This time he was searching for something special. He noticed on the boards that the local underground farmer Nate had requested a butcher knife. The farmer was willing to trade actual beef for it. Cooper hadn't tasted real beef since the city placed most of the citizens on algae and plant rations almost a year ago. They ate steak as one of the weekly meals, but Cooper knew that it wasn't real beef, probably a tofu-based substitute. Cooper remembered seeing what looked like an old restaurant about a mile away on a recent trip to the surface, but the weather had turned bad and he was forced to return empty-handed. Not this time, though. He was going for it. As he walked the corridor, he tried to be as inconspicuous as possible, which was tough to do dressed as he was. The temperatures below in the city stayed constant around 73 degrees Fahrenheit, so most people didn't need more than a light jacket or sweater, and he was dressed for sub-freezing temperatures. However, most people just looked the other way when Cooper walked by. After so many deaths from the famine and the riots topside in 2148, people avoided conflict and retreated to solitude or small families, only coming together in big groups a few times a year. He made it to the passageway with all the warning signs and, looking both ways, crawled underneath the sign. After crossing through some hallways, he made it to a very narrow, dark tunnel. Looking up, he noticed the exposed pipes providing ventilation and liquids to all the people living in the underground city. From there, he proceeded to the end of the tunnel, where a small set of stairs led up. It was 6 stairs to each landing and 12 landings up to the surface. Cooper enjoyed counting each one he's climbed. His boot prints left marks in the dust as he went. Clearly, there was very few people who had any desire to reach the surface, and all of the boot prints were his. As he closed in on the top of the stairs, he could feel the cold as it breached the door. There was even a pile of snow that drifted in through the small gap at the bottom. He zipped his coat up tighter, put on his gloves, and prepared himself for the temperature change. He hesitated for a moment more, thinking about the wild dogs from yesterday, but he knew the risk he was taking and took a deep breath before proceeding.